Hello and welcome to another episode of The Coder Career with me, Cameron Blackwood. Today's guest is Leigh Tobenas. Leigh is a technical recruiter working on behalf of a number of companies at the moment and has come on today to give some expert advice in kind of a special episode actually on how you can land your first couple of jobs in tech. We've also included some resources for you to use as well. Those are available in the description, but we have a number of great tips and guides throughout the podcast. Now, if you just want to skip straight to our guides, then you can skip to around 20 minutes in, but I do recommend that you listen to the full podcast just to get a bit of background first, and then you can take away our tips from there. I hope you enjoyed today's podcast, and if you've got any questions for either myself or Leigh, please don't hesitate to get in touch. You can find our contact details in the description. Today's episode of The Coder Career is brought to you by the Zero to Mastery Academy. Figuring out the right technologies, tools, and practices to learn is a challenge in of itself. Zero to Mastery has a ton of resources to help you actually work out what you need to learn, and then after that, teach you those valuable skills. Their courses are consistently updated to ensure that they have the most up-to-date practices, technologies, and toolings. I particularly recommend their original Zero to Mastery course and their Junior to Senior Web Development course, which teaches you all kinds of concepts around JavaScript and will have you developing scalable full-stack web applications. You can find a link to Zero to Mastery in the description, and membership is as low as $23 a month. Thanks for listening and enjoy the show. Hi Leigh, thanks so much for coming on. How are you doing?
Yeah, good, thanks. Cam, yourself?
Yeah, not bad, thanks. Not bad. All good. The days are getting shorter, but the code never changes, so it's all good. So, for the listeners who aren't very familiar with yourself or your background, do you want to give a quick rundown about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, certainly. So, I've been in tech recruitment for 5 years, covered a vast majority of specialisms within that. And basically it's mainly been UK and Europe that I've recruited in, to be honest. So hopefully I'll be able to provide some good insight to the topics that we're covering today.
Yeah, the majority of our listener base comes from Europe. I think, definitely some very relevant advice. And tech is universal, and that's what we love about it. So you will certainly, if you're trying to get a job in tech, glean some good insight from this interview. I have no doubts about that. Cool. So the way I like to get things started, because it also creates a bit of controversy early on, is some quick fire questions. Some sort of hot take answers are strongly encouraged. So the first question is, what was your first computer?
I'm going to show my age a little bit here, but I did actually have a Commodore 64. I don't know if anybody...
That's a good machine. That's a classic.
I don't know if many of your listeners will remember what that is, but a few of my favourites were Bubble Bobble, Boulder Dash, Tetris, those kind of games. And do you know what? I then got my next console after that was the Mega Drive, and going from a floppy disk to a cartridge was quite weird. But I then played Bubble Bobble on that game as well, on that console, sorry. And
it's a pretty crazy computational jump in the 90s in gaming to the 3D era. Is outrageous. You're actually the second guest to have said Commodore 64 was the first machine. The previous guest, Sam, who I worked with when I was a recruiter, actually, he was saying he had the Neighbours, like the Australian soap. He had the Neighbours video game on Commodore 64, and he was saying that was his sort of formative years playing that. But they don't make machines like that anymore. Like, it doesn't have the same charm. Those are so cool.
No, I kind of miss the old consoles, to be honest. Just like again, I don't know if you ever recall this, but the Mega Drive, you could literally just turn it on and you could get one of two games, like Alex the Kid. I don't know if you remember that game either. That was a favourite.
Yeah, I was quite little when the Mega Drive was big, but I do remember playing it. Usually it was the classic, you go around your mate's house and his older brother had one.
Exactly.
I was more like PlayStation 2 kind of era.
Wow.
I do remember being sort of like in primary school, getting home and just desperately trying to fight. Me and my mates the ones of us with older siblings, trying to get a console. A lot of good memories of that.
Luckily, I'm the oldest, so I didn't have to worry.
Yeah, I'm the same. Yeah, I was lucky enough to have I had a friend who had a brother that was like 10 years older. So we had all the like GTA and that kind of stuff when we were
Nice.
six, which in hindsight, I think our mums would have, well, in fact, my mum did find out and was not happy. I can't
Yeah.
blame her. But
Mate, that top-down view is just amazing.
yeah, it just doesn't have the same charm these days. I
Nah.
think there was a certain charm to it back in the day. I mean, maybe we're talking with nostalgic glasses on, but yeah,
Yeah.
I loved it.
Agreed.
Um, and obviously, you're from the great nation of Wales, Cardiff specifically, right?
Correct, yeah.
So, what's your favourite tech city in the world? Would you say it's Cardiff or elsewhere?
Well, do you know what? I am being biased than Cardiff is, and I'll tell you why in a moment. But one of my other favourites is Belfast.
Mm.
I love that city. I love the people there as well, mainly because of the accent. That's one of the reasons. But it's a good little city to go to. It's a really nice place to be, and obviously they're quite big in the SaaS, fintech, and medtech space as well. So it's just an all-around nice place to be and nice people, basically. But yeah, Cardiff is definitely my favourite tech city, although I have been to quite a few.
Yeah.
Across
Belfast
Europe.
flies under the radar. It's quite an interesting one. Like, people don't realise how much of a tech scene there actually is over there.
Yeah,
I think,
it's rapidly growing as well. Same as Cardiff, and maybe that's why I like it, because it's like both Cardiff and Belfast are underdogs, I suppose, if you will.
yeah.
But yeah, those are my favourite.
Yeah, I definitely see where you're coming from, especially being up here in Edinburgh. Like, it's maybe slightly more established a tech scene here, but even so, we're still, there's a bit of a complex going on with London sometimes. That we want to be, we don't just want to be like second best to London. We want to, we want to make our own mark, and we've had some cool companies come out of here. But I think the effects of COVID and the promotion of remote work in the UK. Is quite exciting in terms of regional tech hubs, because it doesn't have to just be a London centric. The UK doesn't have to be so London centric in tech anymore, and it's exciting to think about.
Yeah, indeed. And I suppose one thing that's working well for Cardiff is the Welsh Gov. They're obviously pumping money into supporting these companies coming to Wales, so that obviously helps as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the more local governments can do that, and also as well, obviously, encourage STEM programs for kids. If you take that two-pronged approach, that's the way, because there's no denying tech is the future. Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Cool. And I know I put on the notes for this one what music do you listen to when coding. I can also include recruiting generally. I think that's a mistake from my side. But what type of music do you like to listen to when you're going about your business?
Well, do you know what? I listen to anything and everything, but I suppose literally what I was listening to just before we jumped on this, actually, I was finishing up a few things with Billy Joel. Nice. Again, I don't know if many of your listeners will know who that is, but I went for some old school music this evening, basically, or this afternoon.
Yeah, that's a good choice. Sometimes the oldies best to work to.
Gets you going, you sing along, and sometimes it deviates you away from your work, but
Yeah, I can't see myself coding while singing along to Piano Man, to be honest, but I don't know, you never know until you tried it, right?
Yeah, exactly, mate, exactly. It may work.
Yeah. What about for time of day? Because this is something where I'm curious about your answer, because I've noticed a definite split here between the recruiters and the coders that have come on the podcast. Coders are night owls and recruiters are early birds. Would you say you're with the recruiters, or are you more of a coder there?
Well, it's funny you say that. Like, I had a little boy last year, and prior to that, I was an early bird. And then a couple of weeks ago, I also got a puppy. So now I don't even know what I am anymore, because I get up at all sorts of times. I don't even know what a full night's sleep is at the moment, to be honest with you. But prior to those changes, I was an early bird.
Yeah, it's. I think sometimes life responsibilities enforce a somewhat erratic schedule. Especially with puppies, because they love to sleep throughout the day, but they're chaos at night a lot of the time, I found.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, he's a good dog, but because obviously he's still a puppy, he's like 10, 11 weeks old. I still need to get up middle of the night to take him out for a toilet so he doesn't damage the house, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, my parents got a puppy last year, and it's funny how much you forget you have to. They rely on you at the start. As
Yeah.
you get a bit older, they're much more autonomous. But yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it's 100% worth it. They're great, but yeah.
Yeah, I've always grown up with dogs, so I'm glad you've got it, but it's hard work.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to being able to get a dog eventually. But yeah, right now in our flat, I think particularly because I like quite boisterous dogs. I grew up with border collies. I think having a
Nice.
collie in the flat would be a complete disaster, and the
That would
deposit the
definitely be
deposit would be
chaos.
gone. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, you're asking for trouble.
What about obviously prior to becoming a recruiter? In fact, prior to even leaving school, what did you want to be when you were a kid?
It's just funny you asked that. It took me a while to think about this, and I was speaking to my mum, and actually, probably not what you would expect. I wanted to join the armed forces,
Oh, okay.
yeah, which is obviously something that well, not that I've ever heard of when I've heard other people speak about that type of stuff. I can give you a little bit of a sob story here. I actually tried to join as well, but a week before I went to actually the training, my mum was taking me into town. I was going to a charity boxing night, and some car ended up just smashing into us.
Oh.
Yeah, ended up getting cut out of the car basically and damaging my back, so I couldn't do any of the training. And then I fell into sales.
What type of sales did you end up doing?
So I ended up in first of all financial sales, like mortgages and like savings accounts, that kind of stuff, and then transitioned more into insurance, more of like consulting, and then got bored of that and moved into thought I'd try recruitment, and here I
Yeah.
am.
It's an interesting one where when I was a technical recruiter as well, the running joke was like no one grows up wanting to be a technical recruiter. You just everyone suddenly ends up becoming one somehow. And
Yeah.
so for you, was it more because a lot of people don't realise the difference actually between. I think it would be a good idea actually to explain the difference between an agency and internal recruiter. I think you're kind of in between though, aren't you? Because you're also consulting on behalf of companies as well, right?
Yes, so at Identify Solutions, we're actually moving away completely now from contingency recruitment, which just because we feel it doesn't give much value to clients and candidates alike. But yeah, at the moment here we do now what we call a talent partner solution, where we are on site with a
Yeah.
client and dedicate ourselves to them to help them grow. So it's a bit of best of both worlds, really.
Yeah, I think being from the outside, I kind of got out of recruiting basically just as that tide was turning, and having seen it happen, I think I can see why it's such a good solution. See why people do it. I reckon it's the future of if you need partner supported recruitment, it does seem like the future of it. From what I
Yeah.
can tell from the outside.
Yeah, 100%. It's just so much more value for everybody, basically. So it makes sense to do that kind of solution, regardless of who you choose. But obviously, choose Identify.
How have you found a difference between working on site and like almost not internally, but like directly for a single client versus when you were doing contingency recruitment?
You're a lot more organized, you have a lot more detail, and not so much control over a process, but you know the process, you're part of that process, and it's very cohesive then with that business, and they know exactly what you're doing, you know exactly what they're doing. It's just a smooth
Mm.
process in general, basically. Um, and in turn, you save a lot of time because you're not getting, from a client point of view anyway, CVs left, right, and centre. Don't know who you've gone back to, and all of that. Basically, it's just nice.
It must be better for on their side as well, not to have to manage like 10 different contingency partners. Much easier just have one in-house solution. And if you are looking for an in-house solution, all of the links to contact Leigh will of course be in the description as well, because we do have startup founders listening, and
Nice.
recruiting is a painful thing to do, and don't we all know it? So definitely get some external support if you can.
Especially since COVID, is people like, I mean, as you probably know, the market is massively in favor of tech people, especially in the software development space. and it's now 100% a candidate market.
It absolutely is, and although it was always kind of leaning towards that way, I've never seen it like this ever.
Yeah,
Just the way it's, and we're talking about the Great Resignation at the moment, where people are leaving, and a lot of people are seeing this and thinking, right, now's a good time to train and, as an engineer, and I agree with that. But what that also means is there's that candidate market isn't going to be so much in favour of juniors, so you will still have competition as a junior. What would
yeah.
you say for someone as someone that looks at CVs? For junior software engineers who maybe don't have any commercial experience, what's the best way that they can stand out at a glance? Because so you're reviewing a lot of CVs in one go. Because I mean, I don't know about it these days, but when I posted a junior software developer job, I would get 70, 80 responses.
Yeah, it's still just as competitive as ever, and you know what? People don't have the time to sift through that many. It's just physically impossible. And I suppose for CV wise, it depends on who you speak to. It is very subjective. But for me, and what I've found that it's worked, and this is feedback from graduates and juniors alike, is having like a set structure. And obviously, just as a note here, if anybody wants to reach out for me to look at their CV, I'm happy to do that and revamp it if necessary, or give them some pointers to go away and think about. Um, and also, never pay for your CV to be revamped or your profile. It's a waste of money. Any good recruiter will do it for free to help you out. Um, so there's a couple of pointers I want to make. First of all, your LinkedIn profile should always reflect what your CV says, which is a good way to go about it, because you've always then got a digital copy for one. And also, the one thing that I see time and time again is engineers, whether they have commercial experience or not, tend to speak about what the business has done and their skill set, and actually not what they've done and how they've contributed. So that's a major thing. And if, as a junior, working on personal projects, you haven't done this and others have, which they do, you're automatically discounted because it's hard to see what experience you have. And one thing that always stands out is always like start kind of your profile with a USP, and this comes into your personal profile, why you differ from the hundreds of others applying for the same job, basically.
I was going to say, definitely looking at it you have to look at it almost a bit brutally when you're looking at your own CV and thinking like, what's my USP, like unique selling point, where you think, okay, everyone likes to think they're really, really special, and everyone is in their
Yeah,
own way, but also as well, you need to convince the hiring manager of that at the first glance. And it's like, how can I make my CV completely stand out from the stack, and what can I do specifically? And if you don't have commercial experience, what kind of projects can I build? And a lot of the time, I don't know. I mean, I'd be curious to see what you thought of this. If my strategy and what I give to juniors as advice is find a problem that you face in your everyday life and build a solution to it. Like, for example, one that got me a lot of success was I built a secure passcode generator. So you would put
nice.
in certain like parameters, be like, it must include numbers, must include dictionary words, must include letters, must include special symbols, and then every 60 seconds it would generate a new passcode.
Okay.
So I did something like that because I thought I'm really useless at generating passcodes, and password managers cost money.
Yeah.
So I made this. So I mean, it needs to be something relatively unique. So I mean, I don't know how much has changed, but I feel like everyone applies with a random quote generator, a weather checker, and the same four projects. For a junior.
Yeah, you also find the clock as an example, or what's the other ones? I made a note. I was rattling my brain on this actually. Um,
The clock is a big one, and the thing is, actually, speaking from a JavaScript point of view, really you can actually do that in like 4 lines of code. Like, I never want to say someone's work isn't impressive, but like it's if something's easily copyable from somewhere online, it's generally not the best. Yeah, you got to stand out.
yeah, I mean, the other one is somebody people build like small or basic games. That's another one which I tend to see. quite a lot. But you're right. I mean, I recently placed a few months ago an actual person that was still in university. He was graduating in June. But while he was doing his computer science degree, he has a big love for the music. He plays the guitar. And one of the services that he used, he found a gap actually in terms of the web app that they were using wasn't really fit for purpose. So he went away, built that web app, and gave it to them for free. In doing so, they then hired him as a contractor while he'd done his university degree, and then I've placed him into a full-time software engineering job, just like that, because of that work he's done. So you're right, it might be actually a problem that you're facing every day, and you go away and make a solution to that. Or if there's something that you're passionate about and you see a gap in the market of something that you can maybe build, do it. Because you're already passionate about it, it's going to be something that you're interested in. They'll give you that extra motivation to do it, and that'll 100% help you stand out from the crowd, basically.
Yeah, you can carve out a niche for yourself easily as well. And like you said, I mean, that's a fantastic example of what that graduate did. That's, I mean, that just goes to show for inspiration to let nothing get in your way. You know, if you genuinely think a business isn't doing something that well, then pitch it to them, because they'll probably appreciate it. Like, especially if it's open source, like. The beauty of open source is you can basically just make a copy of whatever software, edit it to improve it, submit a pull request, and then if it's light, then you can contribute. And you can actually, I mean, this is getting into a bit of a technical chat here, but you can also make contributions to the open source world which stand out in your CV by not even coding. You can just help out by even just translating documentation if you speak another language. Like I contributed some very small documentation stuff to a React library that I've been using a lot. That's open source, and it really helped me out. And I did that within the first few weeks of me looking for my first code job. And it's definitely something because you get a badge on your GitHub when you contribute to like this public project, and you get some recognition. It's like you get some clout behind your name as well for contributing to open source, and people appreciate that. So it's definitely, that's something worth doing as well. And I think people talk themselves out of it a lot. I mean, people do that in general in life, but for some reason, I know software engineers do it a lot in particular.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I like there's some other things that you can do to, for your profile to stand out. I mean, or even just a few tips really is sometimes, and this may not be applicable to the juniors and grads, but this will come in useful as they progress through their career, is I see a lot of engineers cramming all of their information onto 1 page, 2 page, and it's something that we've learned from school. I was taught for it. I don't know if it's still taught in school now, because obviously I'm quite old. But 3 to 5 pages is kind of the sweet spot, really. Sorry, go on.
I was just going to say, people do get very worked up about fitting it all onto 1 page in particular. One caveat I would say is 20% of listeners are from the States. Do try and keep it on 1 page if you're in the States, because it's like just a cultural thing they do. But yeah, here in the UK, don't be worried about it stretching on a bit. And you can even have an abridged version of your CV, whereas you keep it to 2 pages, and then you can have a longer version as well, and you can send both out. So one's at a glance and one's longer.
Yeah, and that comes on to my next point, actually. I was going to say, actually have a master CV where you keep absolutely everything on it. Because then when you go to apply for jobs, which will help then again stand out, you tailor it, you copy and paste what you need onto a document and submit that. And that helps a lot, because you can take the relevant bits and make it suitable for that specific job, which is nice. Just a couple of tips as well, which I've seen, is keep things like I see a lot of juniors putting references on there, their age, whether they're male, female, non-binary, whatever it may be, religion. Keep all of that off. This is a professional document, and you don't want to leave yourself open to positive or negative discrimination, basically.
And it makes it harder as well, because on the recruiter side, you have to disable it all and anonymize it. So you're saving the recruiter some time as well if you don't include anything. I think the issue is sometimes, I think in certain countries, you have to disclose certain things. Like, I remember dealing with, for some reason, I had a lot of candidates. It was a very specific niche. and it was somewhere in Asia, where a lot of my candidates had come from, and I think they legally had to put like their smoking status and their height and all this kind of stuff. So yeah, the discrimination laws were nowhere near what we have.
Yeah, and I think and apologies, this is obviously aimed more at the Europe, because that's where my speciality is. But there's even some places in Europe which will still require that, and if they do, then fine, put it on. But if you've got all of that on your master CV, just put in on your tailored CV only the information you actually need to.
The tailored CV is such a fantastic point, because all it takes is just a few tailored change between 10 and 30 words, and it can make all the difference between job. And make sure you write a cover letter as well if it's your first. If it would be your first job in tech, write a cover letter, explain how much you love the company, talk about the tech they use and why it excites you so much. Otherwise, you won't stand out, because there's nothing worse than it's so obvious. I mean, I can say this as an ex-recruiter, I'm sure you can say the same thing. It's obvious when someone just hits spray and pray, because with a lot of these job sites, like, they all have easy apply buttons. Like, you need to at least invest a little bit in your application for it to get the same respect back from the recruiter, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And any tailored version of a CV that you submit to a job is going to stand out to the other 70 to 100 people that have likely applied to the same role that you have. And an interesting one to this is if you don't know how to tailor your CV to that specific job, have a look at the job description in itself that you're applying to, and use some of the keywords and phrases that they use in from that. Because if you've actually done it or have experience in that, you just use it for your CV to send it to them. That's the easiest way to do it. And another tip for it. Sorry, go on.
I was going to say as well. This is such a boring point. But we're going to play the ATS game, which, by the way, for listeners, stands for Applicant Tracking System. It's just like internally what recruiters use to look after their CVs and applications. If you, at the bottom of your CV, if you basically just put I do this on my LinkedIn as well, just an exhaustive list of all technologies and tools you've worked with, as long as you do want to work with them again, because sometimes people don't want to work with PHP again, and then it will basically capture all of those, so the recruiter can easily see it at a glance.
Yeah, and that's a good thing. And in addition to that, the way, or what I normally suggest to candidates, is obviously have that kind of technical summary at the top of your CV, but also reflect those technologies in your actual, if you've got commercial jobs, in that. If you're mentioning personal projects, mention the tech in here, because the more you repeat a piece of technology, the more from the higher you'll end up in a search, basically, from any ATS search.
Oh, that's interesting. So in theory, if I just wrote Cameron Blackwood CV React 1,800 times below, if I applied for a React job, my CV would come out top.
That's right. So so in theory, so let's say a recruiter's doing a headhunting piece. Everybody does that now because nobody really is on job boards. That obviously have experience.
Yeah.
And they're searching for a React developer, and they put in React. If you've got that 1,800 times in your CV, you're going to be the first one in the search.
That is a really interesting point. I didn't realize that. So definitely people, don't be afraid to repeat yourself a little bit if we're talking technologies. And the other thing as well is to also filter out automated messages. You can put an emoji at the front of your name. I've done that on and off a few times. It's always interesting to see what comes out. Like when you messaged me on LinkedIn a while ago to ask about the podcast, I was like, oh, the emoji's not there, so he's tailored it to me.
yeah, exactly. But there are definitely a few hacks for application tracking systems and or CRMs, customer relationship management tool. If anybody wants to know what that actually is keep your job title to the standard norms as well. So there's obviously a varying titles now of what a software developer could be, as an example. And if it's obscure, that's fine. Still put it in your CV, but in brackets, have software developer, because that's typically what people search on. And whatever the main technology that you're using, so if you're a Java developer or a React, make sure that that's included in your title as well. Because that will, again, help when people are searching for that type of skill set.
Yeah, absolutely. Because people do sometimes, and companies do get a bit funky with the job titles, and don't be afraid. It's not like a legal issue if you change it to a more generic title. Like I think my job title at Purple Bricks is just software engineer, so nice and easy. But
Yeah.
other places I know where people have been officially called a software craftsman, which is a nice compliment, but it's not so great for showing up in a CV search. So change it to software engineer.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't want to be found by people and you want to be left alone, by all means, put that in there and take all technologies out of your CV. But if you want to be noticed, definitely stick with more generic and have that repetitiveness in technologies. But the other thing is you don't want to overdo it and basically have your CV as a word salad.
Yeah. There's a balance to be struck there for sure, because DevOps engineer for DevOps engineering jobs in particular, it's funny. You can really, as an engineer now, I can really gauge the demand for certain things, because I know a little bit about DevOps, but like I wouldn't even be able to be. I'm a mid-level like software engineer. I wouldn't even be able to be a junior DevOps engineer, and I probably get more messages about DevOps jobs than anything else, because I just have a couple of keywords. But that's a point actually, not entirely related to what we're saying. If you want to learn anything, learn DevOps.
Yeah. But the thing is as well that you can be a software developer and also be in that DevOps space, depending on what companies you go to.
Yeah, definitely.
The other important things I'd say for any ATS is they can be fragile at the best of times. So keep your CVs plain. I know it's always nice to have, unless you're a graphic designer, UI, UX type person, as an example. If you're a software developer, if you're a DevOps engineer, you want to be using a Word document, you want to be using nice, easy to read text like Calibri, Arial, Times New Roman, that kind of thing, because it will help the ATS system process your details a lot easier, and also thus putting you up in that pecking order, really, when it comes to searching for people with your skill set, basically.
The whole talk about font. I don't know if you've seen the movie American Psycho, but you know the scene where they're all comparing business cards when we're talking about the font. Have you seen that film?
I have, but not for.
Oh, right, because there's a scene where Patrick Bateman's sort of comparing his business card with everyone else, and they're all talking about their fonts and everything. I was thinking, we must sound a bit like that.
Yeah. But honestly, it's minor details like that that will give you a massive edge over anybody else.
Yeah, it really does, and 100 small things are going to make a huge difference, and just make you stand out. And once you get that first job in tech, like you never really need to work that hard for a job again, as long as you're putting the work into your 9 to 5 and making sure that you're making a good impact. Because recruiters will reach out to you, and that's a nice lean into my next question. Is you're someone that's been in the recruitment world for a while? How can someone know if they're working with a good recruiter? And I originally meant this externally, but I guess it kind of goes for both as well, but mostly externally.
Yeah, so there will be obviously some points that I cover which are more directed towards people like me. And the first and the most major one is off the back. If they're contacting you about the job, they're open who they're working with from the off. If they don't, then that also automatically makes me skeptical about what they're actually going to do with the information that you share. So if nobody's open with who they're working with, don't share your CV. Simple as that. You can have a chat, have an informal chat and discuss it over the phone, but unless you know where your CV's going, don't share it.
And definitely not references either. And there is no company in the world that I've ever heard of that requires references for a first round interview, ever.
Yeah, no. It's just a ploy so they can basically do some more business development and try and get more business.
Yeah, I mean, I did it. I was told to do it by my old managers when I was in agency, and I didn't like doing it, but it was an effective tool.
Yeah, it certainly was. But now, in the day and age that we're in, I mean, references is all in good. There's scraper tools out there and all things like that, so they can get email addresses of contacts and stuff. But just to save yourself, don't put them in there. The other thing is, I think for me, is people are clear about the process. So what they need from you as an individual, and what you should expect from them as a recruiter, whether they're internal or external. Um, they should always know about the business, the team structure, the roadmap, the tech that you're going to be involved in, the role itself, the requirements, and also qualified you against that properly, and then able to tell you whether or not you're suitable, and if you're not, why. That's a big one, because especially for these newbies into the commercial world in software development, if they don't know why they're not suitable, they can't improve. And that's another thing, is when you don't get feedback of why you weren't successful through an interview process, regardless of how far you've gone, how can you improve, and how can you then get that next job?
It's an interesting one, because people often ask me about the external side of things, external recruiters in particular, and I think it's either you either want to avoid working with external recruiters like the plague, or you want to become their complete buddy and partner up with them throughout your career. And there are, for me personally, like I know a few people that like I know. I mean, obviously, I'm open to working to partnering up with other people in the future, but like I know two or three people that I really trust. And it's I mean, it's a long term game for external recruiters to build up that kind of trust. But if you know you're going to trust people to look after you, then it's a great way of doing it. If someone's going to work with you as a junior and give you good feedback, then you know they're the kind of person that you want to keep in your contact book. And I was going to say, this is very petty of me, but I lost a job, my first dev job, 8 weeks into my dev career, and I've kept a blacklist of all the recruiters who ignored me after I messaged them on LinkedIn and didn't even respond,
Yeah,
asking for their help. And I've at least 20% of them have messaged me since asking if I want a job, and just ignored the fact that they ignored my message asking for their help before. So it's very
yeah.
petty, but
But rightly so,
yeah,
and that's the funny thing, is if you're getting emails off them, and you don't want to work with them, just ignore it completely, because they don't get their in-mail credits
yeah.
back, which, by the way, costs a lot of money.
Mm. Obviously, yeah. On the flip side as well, though, if it's a well-tailored message and clearly they've read your profile, do them a solid and just say, send them a message back and say thanks, but no thanks, because
Yeah,
one, they'll really appreciate it, and it will save them some money, and two, like they'll definitely get back in touch in the future with a good
yeah.
when you're looking. So definitely do that.
Yeah, 100%. And rightly what you said, for me, I've got a WhatsApp account, like, just full of people that I know, and I speak to on a regular basis. Like, some I even know when their kid's birthday is, and things like that.
Yeah.
But that's the type of relationships you probably want with somebody that's going to look after you and help you grow in your career. And that's another thing, is once you've gotten into a job, they're probably going to be there to help you get that promotion and promotion and promotion. And then, 5-10 years down the line, you might be going to them and saying, well, look, you've sorted me out. I need some people now. Can you do the same, basically?
Because it works so well from a mutual point of view. Like, you're helping each
Yeah.
other's careers. It really is a partnership, and that's exactly when the recruitment model works so well. And you always hope that the recruiters that do best are the people that build relationships like that. And over the long term, they will be. There's no doubt about it. And definitely, as a candidate, don't be disillusioned, because the recruiters, you may keep a list of good and bad recruiters. The recruiters keep a list of good and bad candidates as well. So make sure you're on their good side.
Yeah, they certainly do. And there are jokes in the office to be made about that as well. And like, oh, I guess who's got back in touch, type of thing.
Yeah, always treat people with respect, especially if they've given you respect up front. Then always treat recruiters with respect, because
Yeah,
you will often need their help. And also as well, it's typical luck that the recruiter that maybe you had an argument with when they were external has gone internal at your dream company. So never burn bridges. I mean, generally in life, you should never burn bridges, but particularly in the recruitment world as a developer, you should never burn bridges.
no. And I suppose one other thing I think to note, especially for these junior guys and graduates, is you'll know a good recruiter, because if they can't help you in terms of finding you a job themselves, they'll definitely point you in the right direction. and give you information and advice on how you can get that job. I mean, if people want to have a look at my LinkedIn, I don't have very many, but there's one recommendation from a chap called Love Kush. And I did exactly that with him. I said, right, I can't help you, but this is what you can do to help. And luckily, lovely guy left me a recommendation because I've done that. And that's what you want from somebody, is saying, look, I can't help you here, but this is what you need to do, basically.
Yeah, and because chances are that person's more likely to come back to you in 18 months. And that is exactly as you say, that's a perfect sign of a good recruiter. It's someone that will, even if they know they don't have a job for you, they'll take that call. And even if their manager is giving them a bit of a push, saying like this isn't the most relevant candidate, they will still listen to you and have a good chat and give you some advice. And yeah, it's a perfect example. And internal recruiters as well that give you detailed feedback. A perfect example of a good recruiter. And in terms of when someone's searching for a job, the advice I like to give people as a developer is keep like a project management board. It's such a lame corporate answer, but keep like a Trello board of your jobs or an Excel spreadsheet, depending on how you like to do it, and track them that way. Is there anything else you would suggest to like keep a job search super efficient?
Yeah, so 100% that. Because again, in the junior graduate space, not that you're going to be sending CVs everywhere and anywhere, but you want to know where you've submitted and where you're at in that process, because the one thing that will hinder you is if you're duplicating any applications.
Yeah, definitely.
And this is what I've said earlier, don't give your CV to somebody that's not telling you where your CV's going, because they might send it to a job you've already applied for, and it could ruin things, basically. But in terms of making the job search efficient, is what I tend to find, and what I've found most recently, actually, Cam, is people tend to just go to Total Jobs, CV Library, Indeed, Read, and that's it. And LinkedIn, obviously. And they leave it at that. But there are IT-specific job boards out there. CW Jobs, JobServe is an example. That's where you should be looking. The others, fine, just put your CV on there and hope for the best type of thing.
Because I was going to say, don't say it too loudly, but we're 40 minutes into the podcast, so only the loyal listeners are here. The TheCodercareer might be launching a job board. I haven't said anything, but keep your ears to the ground in maybe January or so. I'm not saying anything, but it might be happening.
And the other thing is startup-specific job boards as well. So they should be looking at these, because there's a whole host of them.
Yeah. Angel.co is a great one for that. And that's also good as well. If you, for some reason, if you've got this far in and you're not in tech, and you're not like a technical person, even if you're not a technical person, Angel.co has still got really good startup jobs, and it's got a ton of information on the company as well, which is great for the application process.
100%. Working startups is another one, which is a good place. But most of these job boards as well have CV libraries. So a massive tip is upload your CV every Sunday night post 10 p.m. or before 7 a.m. on a Monday morning, because you'll always be at the top of the pile regardless. And every week, if you haven't got a job, just go in and make minor tweaks to your CV in the same time slots, so you're back at the top of the pile. So you're always there.
Yeah, I tell you what, when we were chatting about preparing the podcast last week, when you told me that absolutely blew my mind. I can't believe I'd never thought of that. And even, I'm not suggesting that you mess with like a job boards like servers or anything, and I'm not endorsing anything, but if you could perhaps automate the process of going in, you could even add that to your CV and save yourself some bother on a Sunday night of going in, because it's not that hard to read and write data if you have your login details. Obviously, don't put your login details on GitHub and open source it or anything like that. Put it in an environment variable. I'm not responsible for any lost passwords here, but you could have a bit of fun with that as well, for sure.
Yeah, but as you mentioned earlier, contribute to GitHub, open source projects via GitHub. Have a profile for yourself where you're building and solving these everyday solutions that we talked about earlier. You mentioned writing a cover letter and sending that in. Actually connect with the people if you know who the hiring manager is. And then when they accept, send them a message directly. Just say, look, nothing intrusive, nothing detailed, just a quick couple of lines saying, look, I've applied and these are the reason why I'm interested. And there's also loads of like groups, meetups, Discord channels, Slack channels specifically for your tech stacks. Join them because there are recruiters in there anyway, but also people, other software developers will post in, especially the Slack and Discord, and be like, hey, we've got a job here, anybody interested? There's obviously good places to be that not many people go to, basically.
Slack, Discord, Reddit, and the meetups as well, like, IRL, as we'd call them in the dev community, IRL stuff. Helen, one of the most recent guests on here, who is actually also my colleague at Purple Bricks, she went to the Brum.js at a Birmingham JavaScript meetup and got chatting with Tom, who is our head of engineering at Purple Bricks. And that was how the ball got rolling, and she ended up getting a job with us. So it's one of those things. Like, it's a bit intimidating to go to a meetup sometimes, but everyone's so nice, and like you never know what's going to come out of just having sharing a slice of pizza with someone and having a beer while chatting about JavaScript. It's a great way to go. And just something I wanted to flag from earlier as well. You mentioned the GitHub side of things. So most people do use GitHub, but some developers I know use GitLab and what's the other one? Bitbucket. Definitely try and at least have a presence on GitHub, because usually recruiters only know about GitHub because or at least it's the only one they check for because it is the most major one.
Yeah, 100%. But look, if you do have Bitbucket, if you do have GitLab, just make sure that they're referenced on your CV. So
definitely.
People can do that. And Stack Overflow is a good place to go as well. But if you're going to do any work, if you're going to publish any work, I'd say GitHub is the place to post it, just because of, as you said, it's the most known.
Yeah, I totally agree. Because and also as well, you can see at a glance quite easily with the tiling system of how often people commit to that. And you can, I would also, again, this is veering into technical advice slightly, commit and contribute little and often to make sure that those tiles stay nice and green. Because that's what you want, really.
Yeah, and in addition to that contributing, it's a great place for these guys to learn as well. So not only is it going to help you with your job search, it's going to help you with your ability to become a better engineer.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And we kind of talked about working with recruiters a lot already, but in kind of to summarize, why would you say it's a good idea for a developer to go with a recruiter rather than going totally direct to stuff?
The main thing, which we all tend to lack nowadays, is time. So that's a big one. If like you've got a couple of recruiters that you know you can trust, and you can't be bothered scouring the job boards and looking on LinkedIn, just leave it to them. You know they're going to do a good job and come back to you. The other thing, I suppose, with any good recruiter is some have exclusive clients, where sometimes those clients don't even advertise their jobs, especially for the graduate and juniors. Some even have agreements in place where they have graduate and junior academies where they hire every so often throughout the year to kind of build a talent pool. They don't. If you find those recruiters, you could be in good hands, basically, because you'll always have kind of good opportunities coming your way. And also the final thing is any good recruiter will have a good network. So if you're happy for them to, obviously it's always anonymized. They'll go out and speak, send a bit of marketing out just to try and generate something for you as well. So they've got a few tricks up their sleeve which you won't have basically as an engineer.
Yeah, and as long as you verified they're good, and we've already talked about how you can do that, then working with a good recruiter like puts rocket fuel into your job search. And if you know you want something new, then they know all the tricks. And recruiters, certainly when I was a recruiter, I loved being able to talk to all the different hiring managers, and any excuse to go out for a client lunch. I was a big one for that. So we like to get around. So
yeah, that is true. I mean, maybe not so much now that we're in a bit of a lockdown, but
true.
it is still good because it's good to try and get more jobs on, as you know.
And that's actually a point as well. If you're working with a recruiter who's local to you, and then they place you, this is such a minor point, but you'll often get a fancy free dinner or lunch out, which is always nice, as well as a little bonus.
Yeah, 100%. It's always nice to go out. Any excuse for a pint, really, for a recruiter, isn't it?
Why ever not? Any excuse, yeah. glad something's never changed.
Yeah. No, I don't think it ever will, to be honest.
No, it can't. It's in the blood.
Yeah.
Cool. So I guess that was kind of my main questions. I wanted to as well give you an opportunity to sort of shout out, anything you're working on, but also as well like jobs that maybe you're hiring for right now that junior or senior that are particularly interesting.
Yeah, so and you can see it from my LinkedIn. So one of my clients that I work with exclusively and on site using this model is Heroic Labs, looking for a client engineer. So if there's any kind of mid-level Unity, Unreal developers, C++, C#, be keen to speak to them. And basically any Python engineer or front-end React engineer, hint, hint, I'm keen to speak to you because I've got about 10 vacant roles that I'm looking for with the same client, actually, as they're looking basically to build a new Scrum team or a new team for 2022, just so they can finish what they've been trying to build.
Yeah.
I'd like to give you obviously a lot more detail than that. That's obviously very vague, but it's Python, React, AWS, all of the fun stuff, basically.
I'll pop a link to all the to whichever jobs in the description as well, and obviously as well Leigh's contact details will be in there. Is LinkedIn usually the best way to get in touch, or email?
Yeah, just drop me a connection request and then send me a message, and then more than happy to have a chat, basically.
Perfect.
Obviously, my name and obviously the company it will be quite long for anybody to remember, but I'll send it to you anyway so you can add it.
Yeah, I'll make sure it's all in there, and LinkedIn as well. And I feel like I can't believe we actually didn't say this. If you don't have a LinkedIn, create a LinkedIn. Come on, it's 2021.
Yeah, exactly. It's one of those things that people love to hate, especially if you're an engineer. But from a networking point of view, it's gold.
Yeah, don't get yourself out of a job by not having LinkedIn. That's a clown move that right there.
And final one, speaking of LinkedIn, if you are doing stuff like building projects and stuff, talk about them on LinkedIn and make sure you're referencing them, because you will generate momentum and people will then eventually reach out to you as well.
Yeah, for sure. Just build that personal brand, chat about tech, chat about what enthuses you. You don't have to do all these long embellished stories about morals about candidates that were late for interviews, but you hired them anywhere. It's the classics. But just talk about let's say you've been working with TypeScript recently instead of JavaScript, and explain why you love TypeScript. Just little things like that, and just engage us in content, because your fellow developers will love it, recruiters will love it, and hiring managers will love it. So just do it.
Yeah, 100% agree.
Cool. Right, I think that sort of draws us to a close then, Leigh. But I really appreciate you coming on. It's been a really insightful chat, and I feel like whoever's listening to this will have had their job search supercharged. Really appreciate it, and I'm sure people will have got a lot of value out of this one.
Hopefully, and I'm happy to help if anybody wants to reach out, of course.
Awesome. Well, I'm sure plenty of people will take you up, and as I said before, all the links are in the description. Thank you as well to all the listeners for tuning in each and every Monday. I hope you have a great week. This has been the Coder Career, and we will see you next time.